The Sacramento Kings owe the Atlanta Hawks a first-round draft pick, and the Hawks have come to collect. Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks joins me right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. If you missed my absolute crash out after the Sacramento Kings lost to the Washington Wizards last night, go ahead and check out that podcast. Today, we're moving on. We're looking forward, and I'm not just talking about their upcoming game against the Charlotte Hornets, because like I said last night, who cares about the final 6 games of this season? They don't matter. They're irrelevant. The Sacramento Kings are heading into a summer where things have to change. And one of the major question marks between now and the start of the summer is, will the Sacramento Kings have a first-round draft pick in this upcoming draft to begin some of that change? They owe a draft pick to the Atlanta Hawks, a first-round pick from their Kevin Huerter trade 3 summers ago now. And it is a top 12 protected first-round pick this year. As of right now, the Sacramento Kings are slated to finish with the 13th or 14th pick, which means that pick would go to Atlanta. Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks joins me to talk about how badly the Hawks want the pick right now. We'll discuss the possibility of the Kings holding on to it and it becoming a top 10 protected pick next year. Plus, we'll have discussions about Trae Young, Domantas Sabonis, both these teams' rosters, and whether or not either team has interest in players on the other to bolster their team or make moves this summer, whether or not these two could potentially be trade partners. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the host of the Locked On Hawks podcast, Brad Rowland. The Sacramento Kings and Atlanta Hawks have been connected for years like distant relatives because of one thing: a draft pick, a first-round pick. But the Sacramento Kings have owed Atlanta for years because of a Kevin Huerter trade a handful of summers ago. That draft pick still has not conveyed. It's close to conveying this summer, but now the Kings find themselves in a position where maybe they don't want it to. Matt George from Locked On Kings, Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks. Brad, let's talk about this silly little draft pick that is strung along this trade that should have been long forgotten a while ago. I'm very curious on the Atlanta perspective to it, because for the Kings, it goes back and forth with, no, just get it over with, send the pick so it frees up the rest of your future firsts to use in other trades. And then there's the other side where the Kings are a disaster. A rebuild of some sort is in the future. Don't you want to have a draft pick this summer to get that rebuild going? So Sacramento's trying to figure out what the hell to do with this thing, or what they even want with this thing. But what about the Atlanta perspective? Are the Hawks yearning for this pick this year, or would they be willing to wait another year for it?
Well, it's, the structure of it made it interesting too. Like you said, like it's been a long time, but even the descending protections by 2 every year is like good. It's good nerd fodder for people like us. They're following this stuff really closely. I have been saying for a while, especially coming into this year, that I thought the Hawks should want to get the pick now if they could, because not that I was, incredibly low on the Kings, but I was like, look, if they get the pick, it probably is not going to be like the 27th pick from the Kings this year coming into the season. So if you get a pick, for me, it's like if you get a pick between 13 and 18, 13 and 20, like it's not the exact same value, but certainly it's pretty reasonable in value. And then once it became clear to everyone, I think I would assume including you, that it was probably going to be a play-in or nothing scenario for the Kings the last several weeks. That's the ideal scenario for the Hawks, in my opinion. Now, you'll get split. I've talked to people around the team about this, and there's a little bit of split. But I think the consensus is basically like, hey, if that's the 13th or 14th pick, you got to be thrilled about it. And that's basically the only place it can land now and still come to Atlanta is between 13 and 16, 17. Even if the Kings get into the actual playoffs by winning a play-in game or two, That's still the 17th pick in the draft,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good scenario for Atlanta. And look, I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole necessarily on this podcast, but if I was the Kings, I don't cover the Kings. You do. You're better in this stuff than I am. But if I was the Kings or Kings fans, I would not want to send the pick at all at this point. I would want to get out of the play-in now, and also you already used the term rebuild, so I don't feel like I'm bringing it up unprompted. If I'm the Kings, I'm rebuilding and hopefully not even setting the pick next year. It's top 10 protected next year. I wouldn't mind getting another top 10 pick next year, never conveying a first round pick at all. And on the Hawks side, that's the same thing. Like I think you and I joked about this 2 or 3 years ago. This is the Kings. I don't mean that in a negative way, but like it's so appropriate in some ways that the only time the Kings have been like legitimately good in the last 15 years was the 1 year the pick didn't matter.
Yeah,
the pick could not convey that year. So it was like, oh, everyone rolled their eyes in Atlanta, including me. Like, all right, finally the Kings are good. So next year they won't be good. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, it's what's happened so far. And I think obviously if you look at the projections, the Kings are still likely to, well, quote unquote, likely to send to be 10th in the play-in. Not a guarantee as we're talking here in early April. So that's where it's definitely varied. I know it is on your side as well. But for me, most of the year, I've been saying, look, it's better for the Hawks if they just get the pick now. Just because that way you get a pick, you know you have a pick coming. It'll be somewhere in the teens, and that's a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, I mean, this is the way it works. One team's like disaster is another team's golden scenario, right? Like being, and Brad, you know this very well because the Hawks have dealt with this to some extent too. Being in the middle is the worst place you could possibly be. You're not bad enough to have a really, really good pick. You're not good enough to make any sort of significant realistic noise in the playoffs. And that's where the Sacramento Kings are. The fact that like, if this pick does not convey, it's likely going to be 13 or 14. It's likely barely not going to convey or barely going to convey that the Kings will barely avoid their protection. I mean, we're talking the worst of the worst case scenarios in Sacramento to where the Hawks are getting the best possible pick that they can get in this situation. So if I'm thinking about it from Atlanta's perspective, I'm sitting there with my fingers crossed watching the Kings melt down and implode like they did in Washington last night and going, yes, good.
Well, I will say though, like there's pros and cons there because for me, I am now, as of early April, I would be rooting for the Kings if I was the Hawks to win because I think you want the Kings to be the 10 seed.
Oh, true. Yes, true.
If I'm the Hawks, I want the Kings to be the 10, exactly the 10 seed. That's what I would want. And losing to the Wizards makes that less likely. Like that was one of the games. It's like, oh, surely they're going to beat the Wizards, and then they didn't beat the Wizards. So now it's like I was pretty. Somebody actually asked me. I'm not sure if it's on the show or not, or radio or somewhere. Hey, what's your confidence level in the Kings making the play-in? And this is like 2 days ago. And I was like, I'm still pretty confident. Once KD got hurt, especially, it was like, I think they're going to get in. You lose to the Wizards, and now it's like I'm way less confident than I was 2 days ago of them getting into the play-in. And if they don't make the play-in, that pick's not coming. Right. Unless there's like some crazy shenanigans on lottery night where two teams, or at least one team, I think maybe two teams have to jump in front of the Kings. Anyway, it's a night-to-night give and take right now. I know it is for you for different reasons, but I think basically all Hawks fans that I hear from are rooting for the Kings to win now so that they could get in the play.
Well, what's interesting too, like it's a fine line you're walking because again, you want that pick to fall on the perfect spot, like right on the edge of not conveying, and that's why I'd say I understand. Actually, you're completely right. Like rooting for the Kings to win, but at the same time, their loss to the Hawks last night, the Wizards last night meant that they could not, like they're mathematically eliminated from even moving up to 8th. And somehow the Dallas Mavericks went from a broken Luka-less shambles to now like in the clear for the 9th seed to where they will host at least the first round of the play-in. So now this is the point where it's like, oh, you almost are rooting for the Kings to just go 500 for the rest of this season. They got 6 games left, 3-3. They probably stay right at 10.
Yeah, 3-3. They get in the play-in probably at this point, given where the Suns' schedule is and KD's injury and all those things. I mean, I'll wait in. I'll ask you, True Serum. Do you want the Kings to make the play-in? Do you think that's for the organization? Would you rather be out of the play-in or in the play-in?
So, and like out of the play-in for me, and it's because it doesn't really have to do with the draft pick, although the draft pick is like a branch off of my bitter little tree. Like I'm not in a position to where I don't want to see the Sacramento Kings have any opportunity to claim any sort of success from this season. Like, I understand the fact the play-in gives them an opportunity to somehow win 2 one-off games and limp their way into the playoffs and then turn around and say, we made the playoffs this year when we didn't last year. That's improvement. No, your organization's in an absolute disaster crap hole of a place again. So that's more how I feel about it. But yes, the draft pick is an extension to that, because while like, I don't think the Kings are headed towards any full-on rebuild because they don't want to. Like, financially, they don't want to. They have no interest. Yeah. Ownership, they've been raising ticket prices for the last 3 years. They've tried to milk every penny out of the fan base with the emergence of the Beam team and everything from the last couple of years. So those prices are continuing to go up. They have no interest in dropping them and going down. So the Kings want to remain competitive, but they're also there is no quick fix. Another part of that too, Brad, is like, I don't want the pick to go to Atlanta so that it frees up all the future first round picks for the Kings to go and do something stupid with a bunch of future draft capital in order to make a swing on one more like desperate attempt at being what in the West. It just like that's keeping the pick to me is the safest route to the Kings doing what needs to be done. I guess that's where I'm at with the situation.
And I'm not surprised by any of that. And I think that this entire time, even the last 2 years, this is the same thing we did last year, right? We did a dance. You and I talked about this last year. Like, will they or won't they convey the pick? All they got to do is make the playoffs to keep it, all these things, or not keep it, I should say. Yeah. I do hear other opinions. Look, if you want to get super greedy and you're the Hawks, yeah, is there a scenario where you get the 10th pick next year compared to the 12th pick this year or whatever? No, sorry, the 13th pick this year versus 11th or whatever it is.
Right.
Yes, but if I'm the Hawks, like if you can get the 13th or 14th pick, then you have to be thrilled about that. And generally speaking, there are trades that are win-win trades, obviously. But this is that like all the player, like you let it in the intro. The player stuff's already out the window. Herter's not even there anymore.
Sure.
Like it's all about just where this pick lands and who gets it. That's right. The entirety of the trade at this point. And I think Hawks fans are certainly rooting for at least the 10 seed, if not the 9 seed for the Kings.
It's crazy the difference a year makes, because I desperately wanted last year's pick to go to the Hawks. It ended up being Devin Carter. Not that I have anything to do with any issue with Devin Carter specifically, but yeah. At the time, that's where I wanted the pick to convey, so it would free up assets to try and make a move last summer. Of course,
make the playoffs too. Like that last year was actually a lot more clean because it was like playoffs, pick goes, no playoffs, pick stays. It was that clean. But now you get into the top 12 and then top 10 next year. There's a lot more gray area there. It's like, and you can't, to your point earlier, you can't declare victory as easily. Like, right. When you make the playoffs cleanly, it's like, all right, we're in the playoffs.
Sure.
Even though that's like not the super high bar, but it's easier to sell that when you just kind of get in there. But if you're the Kings and you're sending the 13th pick in the draft, that is not a great, even PR wise, it's like kind of like it's technically a lottery pick. Like it's not, it's a bad lottery pick, but man, that's rough.
It's disaster for sure. Now, I remember because around this time last year, I was in New Orleans. It was when the Kings were playing their second play-in game to the Pelicans. They lost to 6 freaking times last season. And I was on the court pregame, and Kings general manager Monty McNair was there. And I approached him like, hey, question for you. You don't have to answer it. I don't even know if you can. Like, is there a scenario? Is there a way where you could contact Atlanta and just go, just take the pick? Like, we remove all protections, just take the pick. Yeah. And we kind of went back and forth about how that would work. It's very convoluted. Essentially, the Kings would almost have to trade for the pick back, remove the protections, and then trade it back.
And send it back.
It's a very convoluted scenario, but
that's silly too. Like that's kind of silly. Like it should be easier than that,
right? And I came away going, Atlanta wouldn't want this. Atlanta's betting on Sacramento to be Sacramento.
Yeah, but also I would understand that if the pick became unprotected, then the Hawks would be like, no, we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But it never becomes better than top 10 protected. There's only so much upside with the chance to be the 11th pick next year versus getting the 16th pick last year. Like you probably would have just taken the bird in hand. That's what I thought even last season. And I think especially this season, it's like, man, sign me up for the 13th, 14th pick. Like that'd be great for the Hawks.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. I'm talking strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. PrizePicks keeps the game exciting. There's so many different ways to play. Plus, if you want to get the basketball and baseball in at the same time, you can create lineups on PrizePicks that mixes and matches a Kings game with an A's or Giants game. You can do it at the same time. It's fast, it's simple, it's fun. Making a lineup is easy. You can do it in like 60 to 90 seconds right before a game begins. And there are exclusive promos where PrizePicks is basically just giving away wins at times, like Taco Tuesday, for example. Every single Tuesday, PrizePicks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Plus, like holidays and things like that, PrizePicks will give you just some incredible deals to try and help you make the most money possible. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Well, the Hawks and Kings are in somewhat similar positions to where they underperformed this year. They're both looking to. I don't want to speak for the Hawks. I know the Sacramento Kings are looking to some sort of reset. I don't know if Atlanta's going for like a hard rebuild or reset or what they're looking to do. But there's only so many players that come into the league, and this is not like a fantasy draft at the beginning of every year where you just get to redraft your team, right? Your roster is what you have. You have to exchange players. Those players have to come from somewhere, and those players have to go somewhere. Brad, I have heard whispers and conversations in Sacramento of at least monitoring Trae Young. That to me feels like another one of those desperate looking for a quick fix type move for the Kings. And every time they've tried a quick fix, it's been a disaster. So I am very much out on any kind of quick fix scenario, but I do know that that's a name that at least is being monitored, and a lot of teams are doing this, not just the Kings, but the Kings are definitely paying attention to what's going on with the Trae Young status. I wanted to bring up this conversation, and we can talk about Trae, of course, too, but I wanted it to be both ways. So it's not just a Kings perspective. Like, is there anybody in Sacramento, whether it's DeRozan, probably not Levine with his contract, Sabonis, who even has a big contract himself, Keegan, anybody on this Kings roster that you think the Hawks would be paying attention to or trying to, if they're starting a soft rebuild or whatever they're trying to do, looking to that talent as, hey, that's something that we wouldn't mind adding in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks are kind of retooling. I mean, it's funny you mentioned they're in similar spots. As we were talking, they have the exact same record, which is kind of funny. They're 36-40. But I don't want to speak for everyone around the Hawks, but for me, it's much more of a successful season for the Hawks than anyone would say about the Kings, because the Hawks were already kind of doing the retool. Like last summer, they chose to trade DeJounte Murray in a future-facing trade. And honestly, Dyson Daniels is currently better than DeJounte Murray, which is not what I expected. Even though I loved Dyson Daniels, I love that trade at the time. I praised it. No one thought he was going to just be better immediately than DeJounte Murray, and he has been. He's unbelievable. So there's that, but it was already kind of a soft retool anyway. Not a full-on rebuild by any means, but they were already going young. Reece Shea, number 1 pick, Jalen Johnson, etc. I mean, they're pretty young, and they're not pushed. The chips are not pushed in for the Hawks in the way they have been for the Kings. You know what I mean? Right. That makes sense. Absolutely. There's a little bit of context there, and the Hawks are also going to exceed their over/under win total. Like, they're going to be better than people thought they were going to be coming into the year. So that's a little bit of this, but also Trae is a topic all the time, especially even beyond Atlanta. It's like, all right, what's going to happen with Trae? Because he's about to be extension eligible. And you know this very well. Like, if a star gets to extension eligibility and they don't sign an extension, people assume they're going to be traded. There's that will they or won't they point. It's coming this year, this summer. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, but it often is that way. And also, like, you know, they are really young. And Trae's still young. He's 26 years old. He's not like he's an old player, but he's a little bit older than the rest of their core guys, right? So that's a little bit of a setup. As far as what, like, interest in the Kings guys, yeah, I would immediately cross off DeRozan just for age purposes. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's funny. There's always been a contingent in Atlanta. I am not part of this contingent of fans, and it's not crazy that have always liked Zach LaVine like way more than I do, and like pairing him with Trae Young. And I think offensively it would be a lot of fun. Offensively, it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, stop there.
Yeah. So there's that. And in the contract, I would not want to do that, and I have not heard Hawks' interest. But I will say, the Sabonis stuff about like he wants to see what the organization's doing and all of that. Anyway, I don't want to trigger you on the podcast, but there have been people in my life who are close to the Hawks that have kind of wondered to me, in these very casual conversations, like, what would Sabonis look like in Atlanta? Mm-hmm. And not, by the way, not for Trey, like in this scenario alongside
with Trey, right?
With Trey,
right.
I don't know if I love it, to be honest. I've never gone down the road long enough to really think about it like deeply. Similar, because defensively, I don't know if it would ever be good enough. Even though the Hawks do have a lot of wing defensive infrastructure that you would need to have. If you're 1-5 or Sabonis and Trey, you're going to have some defensive problems probably along the way. But he would be the one, and then of course Keegan Murray fits anywhere. So
sure.
Like you mentioned his name, I wasn't going to bring him up because I'm not sure if he's ever going to be available for anybody anyway. But I think Keegan Murray would fit anywhere. Just that kind of forward fits everywhere. So sure,
right.
Sign me up for Keegan Murray if he's available in some respects. I mean, the Trey thing's interesting. I think I've long thought if the Hawks were to trade Trey, I've wondered who that team is going to be that's going to meet their very lofty asking price. The Hawks have never tried to trade Trey. That's a very key distinction. They did listen last summer, very quietly, like, hey, what would it? And no one was even close to what they were going to need to actually do it, basically. But like the desperation aspect we kind of poke fun of earlier, like if the Kings want to go nuts, like maybe that's a team that would kind of make sense on their side of things, because that's the trouble. Like I'm very high on Trey. For Kings fans listening to this, I'm definitely on the higher side about Trey. I think Trey's underrated nationally now. He used to be overrated, which is kind of funny, like 3 or 4 years ago, and now I think he's pretty clearly underrated. Facts of life, it is what it is. But I do wonder, like, who the team is that's going to be like, all right, we're going to give you the ransom for the guy who's getting older, is still really small, and has challenges to build around. I think he's really, really good, but maybe that's the Kings. I don't, it's a mixture. We've done this before. The Kings and Hawks don't always match up perfectly on trades. It's like, it feels like there should be something there, and there always kind of isn't. There's always a disconnect somewhere, other than the Kevin Huerter deal, famously, that actually happened. But what do you think?
Well, first off, look, the Kings already owe you 1 first-round pick. Why not just owe you 7 over the next?
Seven would probably be enough. If the Kings said, "Hey, we'll trade you everything we possibly have," the Hawks might consider doing.
We'll take it all. Yeah, but that's where I think the Trey Young situation is like. That's where I think it's like a desperate swing, quick fix, which just the Sacramento Kings just have to avoid at this point. So I don't think it makes any sense for the Kings really to pursue it. And then kind of like what you broke down, like the assets that the Kings have to trade are not that desirable. Like Sabonis has a tremendous amount of value, and I'm a huge Sabonis fan. Sabonis is now a $40+ million per year player, and that contract basically gets up to $50 million by the end of it. Zach LaVine's got 2 years left on his deal at $48 and $50 million. Like nobody wanted that contract except for the Kings, apparently. And then DeRozan is financially not overpriced. Like he's in the 20 million range, but he's 36 years old, and he's going to want to go to a team where he can just put himself in a window to try and win over the sunset years of his career. And I don't know if that makes sense for Atlanta. I don't know, it makes sense for him. So once again, it just doesn't make sense for the Kings to be a good trade partner for Atlanta in any of these scenarios. But I don't know if the Kings are a good trade partner for anybody. And that's the position that they put themselves in. And that's what's so infuriating about this whole thing. But as you were talking about Trey's situation, like it dawned on me, because the Kings went through the negotiations with a star point guard on the end of his deal, and it resulted in what it resulted in. Was there any part of you or anybody in Atlanta that looked at what happened with De'Aaron Fox this season and it spooked them? Like, oh God, we don't want that to happen. We don't want Trey to hold us ransom or in any kind of perspective, or we don't want the Hawks to get pennies on the dollar, because the Kings sent De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio, got little to nothing of value in return. Some future first rounders that your fingers crossed or anything of value. And you got one of the worst contracts in the league in Zach LaVine by including the Bulls in the deal. Like it's a bad trade for your star, your franchise player. And now here you are. I wonder if Atlanta looks at that and goes, oh God, we got to avoid that with whatever happens with Trey Young.
I think they're always, whenever a star gets moved, the conversation happens in that market. Like, how does this impact our guy? Same position too. And I think, I'm not trying to have a De'Aaron Fox versus Trae Young debate right now, but they're at least in a similar range of perception in the league, right?
Money wise too, yeah.
So you got it, yeah. I mean, there are some parallels there, and that's why I have been signaling, and it's not like a secret. The Hawks know that, everybody knows it. I'm sure as well that this summer's a big one. It's like, okay, you either give him an extension for. I mean, the question is, do you offer him a max extension? His max is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a lot of years. Do you offer that? Do you offer that? That's step one. Number two is, does he want to take it? And that's not a given either. Is there a middle ground below the max? Don't know the answer to that. And then, yeah, if you don't extend him, are you okay going into a season where this is his last year under team control, where he can just opt out and leave at the end of it? And is that better or worse? Like I tend to always lean to, you want to get something back if you're going to lose a guy at that level. Like, it's brutal to lose that guy like that for quote unquote nothing. If they leave him for agency, it's like, man, that didn't go well, especially when you're not a title contender. Like the Hawks are probably not going to be this coming season. Like, it's different if you're all in, you're like, all right, one last ride. We're trying to win this thing and we'll see at the end of the year. That's not where the Hawks are probably going to be next year, if I had to guess. So yeah, there are parallels for sure. And you don't want to get held over a barrel. Obviously, it's even worse in season, which was what happened with Fox, because you have there's limited time, limited suitors that can even do the trade in season. All those things that I know you dealt with for that short, actually ended up being a pretty short period of time. But,
and they didn't have to do it. He was under contract for another year. Like, you could have waited till the summer, but whatever. I digress.
I mean, big picture. If it's going to happen again, if it was something like that's going to happen, you'd rather do it in the summer, where you don't have a time clock. Every team in the league is theoretically able to make offers, and roster management stuff's easier, all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I still think, if I had to guess right now, Trae is going to either extend or they won't trade him. But it's definitely possible, and I think that the rude awakening, if they needed it, came last summer. Was like the ejection option of like, oh, at least we'll be able to trade Trae for 5 first-round picks is not really there, I don't think. The market for, and by the way, I think that's kind of silly. I think Trae's underrated, but I think the reality around the league is, I don't know of a team clamoring to trade like their whole draft, like KD style, for Trae Young. Like, that's not there. So there's a little bit of nuance and context, and like, there's a real negotiation, I would imagine, that's going to happen this summer.
This episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and full control over your finances. Now, Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. There's plenty of those. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start actually building some wealth. You'll get some incredible surprise insights when you use Monarch Money. It broke down for me where all my money was going, how much money I was spending at specific places, so I could kind of correct or fix some of those spending habits. The all-in-one convenience on Monarch Money is incredible. Instead of having multiple different apps and your bank and different spreadsheets and things of that nature, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals all in one place. Collaboration is easy as well. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can share or track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without any of that extra financial stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Well, it'll be something intriguing to pay attention to. It's funny. Well, we'll wrap it up with this, Brad. 6 months ago, if you were to ask me, Matt, you can switch rosters and situations with the Hawks right now, I would have gone, hell no. 6 months later, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I get both those things. I really do, given where the Kings had been. And I probably would have been closer than you a year ago to, like, on your side, to being at least considering it. Now, I do think that's not even, I'm not really a homer. I'm not like emotional the way that I probably was 15 years ago about the Hawks, but I think the Hawks are in a better place than the Kings, just because they're younger, they're cheaper. They got not that Keegan Murray's not good, but like, or Devin Carter, but they're not Zachary Richey. I mean, as far as Jalen Johnson's a $30 million player who's cheap and locked in long-term and all those things. So, and the flexibility of it all. So I'd probably go there, but it can all change fast. We've all seen that in the league. It can all change fast. I was not trying to wish cast a Sabonis ask out on you earlier in the podcast, but I think once that kind of made the rounds that Sabonis wants to hear more from the organization, it's like, oh man, I know what that usually means. Or sometimes
Sabonis asking the same questions that De'Aaron Fox asked. Weird. It's almost like
that everybody asks, of course. Oh, wow. I have to say this too before we sign off. I haven't wait on. I don't know anything about this, but I covered Wes Wilcox in Atlanta. And Wes just jumped ship and went to college to be assistant GM. And I thought, I wonder if Wes thinks he's about to get fired, along with maybe everybody with the Kings. Does that sound? I didn't I'm sure you talked about this at the time. Did we share that opinion, or am I off base there? I haven't asked Wes. I have Wes's number. I could probably ask him. I haven't asked him questions.
Let's put it this way. I think people are jumping off the Titanic.
That's kind of what it felt like.
Because
to me, but I just want to see what you said.
I'm of the belief, and I was pretty darn critical of Wes because he was he very much like he's the front face of this front office. He was the lead assistant to Monty McNair here in Sacramento, but Wes handled a ton of stuff. And
that's what happened in Atlanta when he was not the number one guy in Atlanta either. It was technically Mike Budenholzer, which is funny at the time. One of those final like president head coach pairings. It was Bud in charge, but Wes was, to your point, the GM, the facing guy here.
But Brad, over the last month, you had your assistant GM abandon ship to go to the University of Utah, and you had one of your lead assistants and essentially your defensive coordinator and Luke Laux leave mid-season to go be the new head coach of Florida State. Like, the writing's on the wall. Changes need to happen, and I think everybody's looking around and going, yeah, we're on a sinking ship that I don't think there's not enough holes or glue in the world to patch these holes at this point, right? That's what I think. Wes saw the writing on the wall, and I would have, not that I ever root for people to lose their jobs, but I am very much captain, like, get rid of this front office and start fresh anyway. So I would have wanted to see Wes's departure one way or another, and it makes it morally easier for me to just see him leave and go take a new job, and I could say, thank you, bon voyage.
Yeah, no, that's the only connection that we had not talked about. And honestly, that's one where, like, I'm old and I've been covering the Hawks for a long time. Hawks fans now are like, who's Wes Wilcox? I don't know who that is. But I covered Wes, so I was curious what you thought about that. Well, here we are.
Here we are, man. What great. Wonderful. That sure 1 year of the Kings being in the playoffs was sure wonderful. Now let's go back to 16 more years of hell.
1 year in the playoffs when they did not owe their draft pick to the Hawks. The one time they didn't owe their draft pick to the Hawks, they made the playoffs. So
freaking league. This league is so stupid. Basketball's stupid. Locked On is stupid. Brad, have fun in Atlanta or whatever. I don't care.
I'm going to clip that and play it for our bosses. It's just says Locked On is stupid. Caption Matt George.
He listened to me completely crash out after the Kings lost to the Wizards last night. He watched the podcast and texted me this morning saying he liked it. So I think they enjoy the pain here in Sacramento. But hey, best of luck in Atlanta, Brad. Hopefully you get your draft.
You're a
pick,
celebrity.
buddy.
You're a celebrity now for some of your cold opens. You know, all these. You're just a Locked On celebrity. That's all. I don't get that stuff. I'm boring. People don't like what I say.
I'm just saying.
Thank you, Matt, for doing
this. We need an alcoholic company just to sponsor Locked On. That's my goal. Is just get some alcohol so I can drink legally on stream. Appreciate you, Brad.
You too, Matt.